Hello and welcome to my video. Today we will be talking about NASA's space shuttle. First of all, I'm just going to say that on the Wikipedia page for the space shuttle, and this is if you choose to go and do more research yourself, it weirdly mentions the America bomber project from the Second World War, like the ones that the very bad people wanted to do to drop bombs on the US. Anyway, is part of the history of the space shuttle, but that is just untrue. It had nothing to do with the space shuttle's development, but just thought I'd mention that if you plan on going and doing any more research on the shuttle. So let's get into some actual real history. So why does the shuttle exist in the first place? Well, in 1975, the final flight of the Apollo spacecraft was flown with the Apollo-Soyuz test project. So NASA needed a replacement for the Apollo spacecraft. NASA had already been considering replacements by the end of the Apollo program. And during this process, NASA realized that they would need a reusable spacecraft. They quickly started designing a spacecraft that would launch conventionally, but then come in to glide and land on a runway. Many concepts were presented to NASA. One conjoining feature of many was that they have a lifting body. A lifting body is where not only the wings, but the body of the aircraft creates lift. NASA had already experimented with this in the mid-60s and early 70s with their HL-10 lifting body concept. This prototype not only demonstrated that it was a feasible concept, but also a really good glider, and it was pretty well handling. The information gained from the HL-10 program and other lifting body prototypes heavily influenced the design of the shuttle, and eventually the final design of the shuttle was decided. It would be a lifting body orbiter, a large expendable fuel tank to power the orbiter's engines, and two reusable solid rocket boosters, or SRBs. To quickly explain how the solid rocket boosters work, it's kind of like a sludge, but then it hardens. That's filled into the booster, then it's lit. This creates a large amount of hot gas that shoots out of the back and propels the rocket. The only issue with it is it's like a giant sparkler. You can't really turn a sparkler off because it works like a fuse, and so does the SRB, which I will now be referring to as an SRB if you can't tell. In short, you can't turn it off. Let's get back to the history of the shuttle. Shuttle Enterprise, yes, it's named after the ship from Star Trek, was built as OV-101 and was used for test flights. Enterprise would be hoisted onto the back of a specially modified Boeing 747, which was called the SCA, or Shuttle Carrying Aircraft, and then once high enough would detach from the shuttle and would glide back to the ground. This was done to test not only the shuttle's atmospheric flight capabilities, but also its telemetry and flight systems. Shuttle Enterprise was not built for space flight, but was considered, but it was primarily built for testing. So the next shuttle to be built, OV-102 Shuttle Columbia, would be the first to enter space. And on April 12, 1981, that became a reality. Flown by Robert Crippen and commanded by Moonwalker and Apollo veteran John Young, Shuttle Columbia spent 2 days and 6 hours in orbit. Shuttle Columbia then deorbited and landed on a dry lake bed at Andrews Air Force Base in California. NASA actually won the 1980 Collier Trophy for greatest aviation achievement. Columbia stood alone for 4 more shuttle flights until the second shuttle, Shuttle Challenger, was finished and flew in 1983 on STS-5. Then in 1984, Shuttle Discovery was launched on STS-41, and in 1985, my personal favorite shuttle, Atlantis, flew on STS-51J. The shuttle was revolutionary for spaceflight, and it became one of the first reusable spacecraft in the world. But sometimes with innovation comes tragedy. As in January 18th, 1986, it was an extremely under the regular temperature at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Cold weather was known to damage the large O-rings inside of the solid rocket boosters, with cracks showing after cold launches. But even though the engineers at both NASA and the SRB's manufacturer had alerted NASA about the issue, and the launch date of STS-51L was not suitable, NASA administrators and higher-ups pushed for the launch ahead as they were about to launch their first civilian astronaut with their Teacher in Space program. The liftoff went properly, but 79 seconds into the flight, the shuttle suddenly exploded, killing all 7 crew members. The O-rings and higher up at NASA were eventually blamed for the disaster after a lengthy investigation. This put a temporary hold on the space shuttle program, as NASA was hesitant to launch after such a tragedy. 2 years later, Shuttle Discovery launched on STS-26 in 1988. In 1990, the Shuttle Discovery embarked on its most famous journey, to deliver the Hubble Space Telescope. The Hubble Space Telescope, up until the launch of the James Webb Telescope a few years ago, was the most powerful space telescope launched by humans. Later, in 1992, Space Shuttle Endeavour launched. The shuttle program was back and kicking. This, in my opinion, is the best example of NASA coming back from disaster. They returned and did some remarkable feats of engineering and science. The shuttle continued to go on satellite launch and repair missions as well as using Spacelab. Spacelab was a module that essentially was a precursor to the ISS modules Leonardo and Destiny, which are the two lab modules. There's also Kaibo, which is the Japanese lab module. Spacelab did multiple research missions in space. In 1998, on STS-88, Space Shuttle Endeavour launched Unity, one of first many U.S. and Western-built modules for the International Space Station. The shuttle program was crucial for the successful and quick development and construction of the space station. But on February 2003, while returning from a 16-day mission, Columbia STS-107 and its crew started re-entering, and during the re-entry over Texas, the space shuttle disintegrated. This killed all 7 crew on board. It was known that during the launch of Columbia, the underside of the shuttle was struck by a loose part of the external fuel tank during its separation from the shuttle, but as astronauts weren't able to go onto the other underside of the shuttle, they weren't aware of the puncture in the RCC or reinforced carbon composite. The loss of Columbia put the space shuttle on a hiatus. This was the second shuttle lost, and not only NASA, but the entire U.S. government was considering canceling the space shuttle program right after Columbia. But after an investigation, it was decided that the shuttle program would continue, but as it was getting older, it would be retired in 2011. In 2005, STS-114 or 114, I don't know how you say them, the shuttle's return to flight would be undertaken by Discovery and its 7 crew members. The space shuttle continued to assist in constructing the International Space Station until the station's completion in 2011. That's kind of convenient timing. The shuttle Atlantis also went on to go and repair the Hubble Space Telescope in 2009. On July 8th, 2011, Atlantis launched from Kennedy Space Center for the very last time on STS-135, carrying Raphael module to the ISS. It then landed after an almost 13-day mission back at Kennedy Space Center's shuttle landing facility. This marked the end of American human spaceflight for the next 9 years, until SpaceX Crew Dragon Demo 2 in 2020, was also known as Launch America, launched to the International Space Station. The space shuttle really is what every single person thinks of when they think of a rocket. It's probably one of the most famous spacecraft or even aircraft ever built, and that's why it's so special. Thanks for watching this video. It would be really, really, really great if you liked and subscribed to this channel. Goodbye.